Hello, everyone, and welcome back to video 2 in this Introduction to Competitive Speech series. As a reminder, my name is Lavanya Bhatia. I am a junior at Basis Scottsdale High School, and I have been competing in speech and debate for 3 years now, actually. So, yeah, I love it. I love everything about it. And today we're going to dive into how to actually find and create or just cut down your piece. So, interpretation. All right, so as I kind of already mentioned, interpretation cutting. So it's the art of consolidating others' words to create your own. So interpretation itself is an interpretation of others' pieces. So in this event, you're not directly just like copying an entire show because that's way over 10 minutes, right? So you're cutting it down and you're kind of like creating your own arc out of it while still keeping the integrity of the piece. So you're just keeping the main ideas. You can also put together different pieces to build your own narrative. So cutting is a huge part of speech, and it can be a make or break on competitive success. So what is cutting? As I already said, cutting down paragraphs, chapters, or sub storylines to craft your own interpretation. Beware, you are not allowed to Frankenstein. So Frankensteining is basically taking an author's words and making it completely losing the integrity of their intent. It's basically putting together sentences from different pages out of order and just messing up the intention. So please do not misunderstand me. Cutting is basically just making it simpler and more consolidated for your performance. So duo, DI, HI, and prose. As I already kind of mentioned, these are more of the existing script ones. So you have existing scripts, you have movies or books, and you kind of just shorten them. For duos, a lot of things don't just have two characters. So a lot of people in duos play multiple characters each, or like for humorous ones. You also cut people out for duos because there's a lot of like shows and stuff that people use. DI, you're cutting down an existing script, a memoir, a story. HI is more of just like a comedy piece or also a movie or show, and then prose is similar to DI. Poi and poetry, these are the interesting ones. So poi, as a reminder, is program oral interpretation. That's where you put together different stories, news reports, books, poetry, songs, like perspectives to create your own program, and it's always like around a central theme. Poetry is very similar, but it's shorter and it's only poetry. So I know it can be really confusing because when I first heard about it, I was like, what does that even mean? I will show you an example of a poem, and I will also link examples of performances of all of these kinds just to make it a little easier. But yeah, we'll get deeper into it in a second. So, Duo, DI, HI, and Pros. So these are existing websites that have really good existing scripts like Mushroom Cloud, Brooklyn Pubs. 10-minute plays have 10-minute plays, and then you can also find movies, television shows, chapter books. You can find example performances online. For nationals, a lot of them aren't like famous movies, famous books. Some of the HIs are, but for the most part, people find like niche things with relatable storylines or I don't know, twists on characters that exist. But there's just a lot of different things you can do, and these are all really great places to start. Step 2, choose a moral or specific story arc to follow. So, a lot of the time, I know this can be incredibly difficult, especially when you don't really know what you're trying to get out of the piece, which is why it takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of sitting with the piece, reading it, and working with it to actually come up with a functioning storyline. But just remember at the end of the day, it's your choice, it's your words, and you aren't really being judged on your like you can choose what you want to create of it. Okay, so you don't be scared of being judged for like it being a bad cut, because a lot of the time judges only really see what you're presenting to them, so they don't really know what you're leaving out, right? So try to bring in details that you think aid your piece, but don't really worry about the super minute details that either hinder or aid your piece. Dramatic interpretation, so this is really specific for DI and HI. Sorry, was like, okay, cool. DI. So one person memoirs, recounts, and tragic stories are often told from the perspective of one person. So it shouldn't be too difficult to cut side characters out. So here's the story arc. I can talk through it, and I'm also just going to show you an example of my cut. It's called A Mother's Reckoning. It's a really good piece. I love it so much. It's about a mom whose son was actually the shooter of the Columbine tragedy. It's tragic. It's a lot of emotions, but I really enjoy doing it, and I think it has a good moral because it's a niche topic. It's not just school shootings. It's about victims who are overlooked in these tragedies, victims who you know, survived it, but who like faced trauma and a lot of PTSD for years after, So it's about that mental health struggle as well. Story arc. So it's a setting. So this is usually before the context. You have a person, they are often happy, they're just, introducing them to the characters. Remember, it's not a direct one-on-one person talking to the audience. It's more of like person acting out, showing a scene, like doing some blocking, talking to someone, and sometimes the audience doesn't really know what's happening, but it's more of just like a calm peace before the storm. And then we usually have a little bit of rising action and then straight into the context. So the rising action is when you kind of understand the tragic situation of this person. You're like, oh, their mom was in a their mom was in a car crash, or like there's going to be a school shooting. Like you can start to understand the foreshadowing, and then it goes into the context where you're like, okay, yeah, this is the moral. This is what I'm really trying to look for in this piece. This is what I'm trying to get out of it. This is how they cut it to be. Um, Begin explaining the character, the situation. We learn more about their lives, and then the climax is often when something tragic happens to them. So this is not the character telling you what's happening, it's rather the character showing you what's happening. So this is a really important part of DI because this can be a make or break for performance. It's really just about being authentic, being believable, and just being in the moment. A lot of people do cry during their performances. I know it's technically considered a prop at some levels, but for the authentic performances where you can really get in the character and just try to get in their head and understand what it would be like to be told this information, to be, a victim of this circumstance, I think those really do the best, and those are the most enjoyable ones to watch it perform. So the falling action, this is more of just like a messy like regrouping kind of. They're forced to grapple with an aftermath. They show considerable growth, and there's complexities within the character. Oftentimes the character isn't completely over it. The character is still struggling. The character maybe brings out a nuanced perspective of the audience. It's really just the character grappling with what's happening, explaining the story in detail, and then just communicating with different like characters or different people or different perspectives to try to reach a purpose. I know it sounds confusing, but it gets easier, I promise. And then the conclusion, it's not like a ready-made conclusion. It's not just a one and done. It's more of just like a this sometimes it calls back to the beginning. Sometimes it's like a time switch, like the beginning was just like the person looking back and recounting, and then back at the end, now that the audience knows everything that happens, you have like a newfound understanding of the character and their perspective. It's usually still somber, it's still solemn. They have a newfound understanding, but it's also just like I couldn't really do anything about this. I'm trying to make the most of my situation, and I hope you as an audience really were able to work with me and understand. So I am just going to show you this cut because this is my piece. I will also attach this to the drive because I think that's going to be really important for people to look through it. But basically, this is this beginning part. Actually, now that I think of it, I'm going to do this in a later episode because I want you guys to get a general understanding of how this all works. Apologies for that. Moving on to humorous interpretation. So, choose a specific moral. Similar to DI, it's often multiple high energy characters, obviously delivered by one person. Usually there's the character is still looking towards the audience when they the person's still looking like towards the audience when they're switching characters, so it's a lot of just like intonation, like body postures, energy levels. There's still a moral. The introduction is usually just like it's a lot less straightforward than dramatic interpretation, I will say that. It's more of just like characters being crazy, talking to each other, and it's just like presenting I don't know, a humorous circumstance or an ironic circumstance, I'd say. Rising action, there's a general journey or a story, something's happening, someone has to complete something. Often the times it's really really silly. There was one can't remember it. One person I saw an HI about one person trying to retrieve a bowl from their neighbor's yard, and it was just this whole fiasco. There was this other character that was with them, and they kept switching back and forth. There was this like lovely banter that was going on. There's a lot of different things you can do with it, but basically the introduction, you meet the main characters, not directly. Rising action, general journey or story. You kind of get a better sense of who the characters are in HI than you do DI. And then climax, humorous or ironic event takes place. Audience gets to know the characters more. So one of the biggest things about humorous interpretation is that there's always like a moral or another, not sad, but just like more purposeful element involved. So it's not just someone going up there and being crazy for 10 minutes straight. It's like a satire to some extent. Like I think the best ones that I really enjoy watching are the ones that are relatable, but are also just like, this is funny because it's true, you know? So I think there's a lot of different things you can do with that. And then following action, the moral is uncovered. They ironically deal with the situation. They can the characters maybe have a fight. I don't know. There's different characters. The more things about HI is just like being clean on your performance and just having really good just back and forth with yourself. Honestly, having good intonation, having good eye contact. It's a lot more about the performance, I'd say, for HI, because you're always gonna meet like crowds, that stone faced crowds, but it's really just about what you make of it. Conclusion, there's always some sort of like dry humor yet accomplished sense. The character is just like they often end on a humorous line, an ironic line that calls back to the beginning, and it's just an enjoyable 10 minutes to watch, and it's really just a it's almost like watching a fun TV show, like a sitcom. I'd say that's what an HI is. It's really just to keep people, a little lighter, especially when our world is very, very dark. Okay, cut. So, this is how you cut. Now that I explained how it's supposed to work, so I would say try and figure out your personal plot line. Try to cut out any characters that you think are really just unnecessary to the plot, maybe don't have that many lines, maybe aren't interacting with the main character as much, and maybe are just too much to incorporate. Then you're gonna cut out any paragraphs that distract from the characters or intentions and lines. There's a lot of things that I cut out during my DI that were just distractors, I want to say. They simply just veered off the point. I think they were extra lines, they were redundant to some extent. It was like the character being like, I was so sad. I'm like, I can show that in my performance. So it's and also 10 minutes is longer than you think, I want to say. So I know I said you only have 10 minutes, but you are able to come up with a functioning arc in that time. Make sure to stay in order chronologically, unless you do some sort of like scene swap thing in within your piece. A lot of people do this thing where it's just like I'm in the like future looking back on myself, and then this is for dramatic interpretation, the actual story happened in the past, and then you understand why the character is so sad, and then they just go back. But I think a lot of the time about cutting, you want to stay really clear about your intention. You want people to understand what you're saying, where you're trying to like get at it, and you just want to exemplify traits of characters at the beginning that are important to the storyline, that either change, that are like, their main heroic quality or trait, things that caused them to be a victim of tragedy, things that they valued before something happened to them. And it's difficult, but it's really just about sitting with the piece and figuring out what you want to say. And I'll show you a cut. All right, poi and poetry. Sorry. These are the ones where you put different pieces together. These are super fun categories. I recommend everyone try at least one of these because you can do whatever you want, and the judge only has what you give them to judge. So choose a topic. You can create your own art. So there's a lot of nuanced topics. I'm doing one about how women are considered crazy, just women, and then I like scream in it, and there's a lot of fun elements you can add. I did one about generation effects of trauma and child abuse. I just did child abuse, but I would say do something about like, I don't know, one person talks about like technology and how, or oh no, sorry. One of my best friends, she's doing this poetry on how we are desensitized to the media. So it's like this entire piece with like, stories of people being like 5 people dead, blah, 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 someone scrolling their phone, and you can use your poetry or your pieces. You can build your own characters off of that, which is what I really enjoy. So desensitized to media, people do things about like, there's a lot of like racial, gender things. Sometimes people talk about like specific wars or events that happens. It's really just what you do and then how you present it, how what characters you choose to do. So make sure you really care about your topic. You don't have to go through a trauma to present it. Um, I think that's a really big misconception because a lot of people are worried about offending people or not coming off authentic, but you can't control if you're a victim of a lot of these things. I want to say, and I think it's really important if you do care about it. If you have people that you know that have these things, or if you just have something you want to say about it, I think it's totally fair game to just bring it to the table as long as you're not doing anything that's directly insensitive. But I am going to say a lot of things in speech and debate are like competitive things are people depicting, like especially interpretation, people depicting raw examples, of people that go through these things. So I think it's really important to do your research and really just get close to your content to create an authentic performance. But I think a lot of things are fair game, more than people usually expect. So think about the varying perspectives you can present this from. Poi. Similar to poetry, but it's just you have a lot more options. You can do news reports, mantras, personal stories, pieces of fiction. It's not about different voices, it's how a person presents these voices. So it's like you can do a political irony piece, do pieces from like the president's speech. Sorry, it's a little political. You can do pieces from the news, you can do like random stories you can find. There's a lot of jumping back and forth between humor and drama in a poi, but it's never a straightforward speech. I want to say that. I want to make that very clear. Poi and poetry are using different elements and different perspectives to almost evoke pity, drama, horror, fear, empathy in the audience to really just create a moving piece. And I think that's the things I love about poi and poetry is that it's a lot more up to interpretation than you think. So spend your time looking for different stories from perspectives and you can make whatever you can take something from the president and say it as a actually, no, I wouldn't do something as a present, but you can take a random poetry piece and it's just like, I have no idea what this is saying, but you can pretend it's like, I don't know, some person from like some kid that went through something tragic. Like you can really just, it's your own perspective. I will show you a poi cut later, but I think it's very cool. So poetry, I kind of already explained this. Judges don't really have like an idea what the poetry means because a lot of the time poetry isn't just one thing, right? So you're allowed to put together different pieces and it's shorter and yeah, it's really you'll get a better idea of what it is and with the cut, but it's similar to poi, just poetry though. Oh, and that is all for today. I know this was a very, very convoluted lesson. That's why I'm going to upload examples of pieces of like poi, poetry, duo, DI, HI, because I think that'll really help people get the hang of it. But beyond that, cutting is really something that you grow to understand. I am always ready to help you. There's examples of cuts online. And if you don't know how to cut, and if poetry and poi are a little too ambitious, please, please, please start with Duo or DI or HI where existing scripts and examples are online because that's just a really good way to just get started because once you start working with a piece that someone else made, I think it's really easy to be like, wow, I don't like this, I want to change this. So I think you're able to find your voice more once you experiment with existing scripts. So those are my 2 cents, but um, honestly, that is the rest of this lesson. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this helped. And please, please, please reach out to me if you need anything. Please watch the examples. Please read the PDFs that I upload because I just want to share the beauty of this world. Thank you.